Good morning. I'm delighted to be here again in Switzerland. We are all futurists. All of us have our own view about the future, and each of us sees the world through different glasses. So my own glasses are British. I'm happily married to my best friend. I have 4 children. All of them are futurists from the age of 22 down to 17. One of the futures that I wear is as a physician, looking after those dying of cancer in my first life. And one of the things which that does is it focuses your attention on the fact that life is short. And I spend a lot of time talking with high net worth individuals. In fact, I was with 50 high net worth families and in Boston just 2 days ago. There were clusters of 4, 5, or 6, or 7, or even 8 members of the same family, talking about issues like succession, wealth planning, philanthropy. How do we involve the next generation? And what is it all for? And one of the things that I find many families talking about is the future, the next generation. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to look at the future through 6 phases. They spell the word future, F-U-T-U-R-E. And the first phase is fast, to do with the speed of change. And the fact that many things are changing faster than you can even offer new advice to an investor. Now, that is a... It's a challenge. We've seen spectacular growth forecasts for wealth management with UBS, and I've been working with UBS since 1996, and I feel a part of the UBS family. But it's a challenge, and for you as independent advisors, as people who are working with some of the wealthiest people in the world, this is a challenge to keep pace not only with their own needs, but the needs of our world. I spend a lot of time looking at the outer edge of this radar screen, not at the center, but at the low probability but high impact risks that can come crashing into strategy, customer relationship, product development. These may be geopolitical events. They could be all kinds of issues. If you are an airline, it could be something like this. If you are an investor, it could be something like this. People often ask me about bird flu and whether it's all a load of hype. Well, let's just have a quick look at this particular wild card. We don't know what the risk is of this virus starting to change and spread fast among human beings here in Montreux. But one thing we do know is this, that if it starts to happen, it could spread very widely. If we were to see a new kind of flu develop, over 98 million cases could be seen in the United States alone over the next 18 months. And the United States government is estimating that up to 2 million of those might die. So you might ask, what is the risk of such an event? Now, I don't know. All I know is that the World Health Organization, the European Union, the Japanese government, they are all working on the basis that it's 100% risk that this virus will learn how to change and spread quickly, or that a new virus, a new kind of flu will learn to adapt to humans and spread. A bit like SARS, but worse. And in fact, as a physician, I've been studying new viruses for the last 18 years. In fact, my wife and I run an AIDS foundation active in many countries. And the purpose of this AIDS foundation is to try to deal with a new virus, which only emerged about 30 or 40 years ago. Now, we can debate about this, but you know, much of the future is about timing. It's not about whether San Francisco will have another big shock. It's a question of when. Now, one thing is certain. When you look at something like bird flu and some of the worst case forecasts, and then you wind back the videotape to the start of the story, one thing is clear, that it's the emotional reaction to events which is even more important to the market, to investors, to the behavior of high net worth clans. Emotion is even more important than the actual event. Let me ask a question. Imagine that the first cases of new bird flu spreading amongst humans, the first cases were reported about 4 weeks ago. Let us imagine that 3 weeks ago we had 200 cases in Beijing, of which half are doctors and nurses, and all of them are in hospital. Let's imagine the following week that many of those doctors and nurses have died. Most of those patients have died. And we now have cases in Moscow, Frankfurt, Lisbon, Madrid, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, London, and a small cluster of 5 cases in Zurich. Let us imagine by the following week, the number of suspected cases in Zurich is now 50, and there are another 200 in Geneva, and we now have 2,000 suspected cases in London. Most of them probably don't have it, they just think they have it. Let's imagine the following week we now have 3,000 suspected cases worldwide and 1,000 confirmed cases. And let us imagine that in week 4, which was 2 days ago, we now had suspected cases in Basel and Geneva. I want you to put your hands up if you think it is possible, just possible, that you might have decided to stay at home today and not come to this event. Put your hands up. It's about half, and in fact that's what statistics show, that about half of your investors and business colleagues will stay home within the first 3 to 4 weeks when there are only 2,000 suspected cases in the whole world. What that shows us is the future is not about bird flu. It shows us the future is not about technology. It's not even about banking products. The future is not about terrorism attacks or weapons of mass destruction. The future is not about geopolitical change. The future is about emotion. It's about how people will think and feel. And that is at the heart of advising on investment. It's understanding how other people are going to think about some of these things. And that is why we don't believe market research, especially not when you're talking to high net worth customers. You can talk to them as much as you like, but they may change just like that. My mother, many years ago, said that she didn't like mobile phones. 2 years ago, she said she didn't like mobile phones. 2 years ago, as a private banking client, she said that she would never use the internet to trade online. She'd heard all about the phishing scams. By the way, one bank in the EU yesterday lost 1.5 million euros through phishing scams. Just one bank in Europe, as a result of online attacks, losing 1.5 million euros a day. And it's difficult to do anything about. That is why my mother didn't want to go online. One day, she phoned me up about 12 months ago. She said, "Patrick, I have to go online. My friends are communicating all the time, and I am missing out on all the invitations to do social things." So I went, and I took her to the computer shop, and I expected she wanted a small computer, cheap computer. No, she wants the best. She wants Windows XP Professional with Core Duo 2, Intel, whatever it is, the fastest. She wants a broad computer, broadband. She wants a skipping computer, Skype. She wants a video computer. She wants to do whatever she does in the garden, and she wants to do it all the time. So we come back with a 9-hour battery life, a camera, broadband, wireless network, integrated firewall, virus software, Skype, and all the rest. Then the following day she phoned up and she said, "The computer is amazing. I can do all these amazing things, but the phone is awful." She says that this mobile phone, it's supposed to be a video phone. She says, "I can see you now, but I can't see my bank." Why? Because she phoned her bank and the bank had no video facility for taking a video call. But video calls have been around for 3 years. The reason they can't take a video call is they believe in market research. And my mother has told them for the last 35 years that she will never even want to go online. The last thing she would want is to see her banker on a video phone. So my question is, how long does it take a large institution to start video enabling all their platforms? And the answer is a long time. So listen to my mother, please, but don't believe her. What we do is we listen to my mother, we get very close to her, we understand every concern that she has as a high net worth individual, and then we build a vision of what her future could be like. And then we try to imagine how my mother might feel in the future, and that gives us some answers about how she will live. I'm going to show you an example of this. This is a video that was banned in my country. I thought you'd like to see it. It was shown for a brief 2 or 3 days in the UK on TV, and then there was a huge reaction. Now, this video scored 10 out of 10 for market research. So what went wrong? Here is the video. I want you to tell me why it was banned. Okay, listen. Please, will someone tell me what on earth is wrong with my country? I mean, why on earth was such a video banned? Have you any ideas why? What do you think? No idea why such a video would be banned. Have you any idea? No idea. Who has seen the video? 1 or 2. So it was mainly banned in Switzerland already. Okay. Any ideas why it might have been banned? Too much bare flesh. Well, possibly, yes. Any other ideas why? Any other ideas? There's too many men in this room. That's the problem. You see, some of the women here, they say things like, yes, but I had to answer my daughter when she said, "Did you scream when I was born?" And the answer was yes. And actually, you know why it was banned? I'll tell you why. One reason, some people had been to funerals of their grandfathers the night before, and the children were crying when they saw the video. Others said, you know, I have noticed something, that every year Christmas Day comes round a whole week earlier than the year before. Have you noticed this? Life is speeding up. And this video contains a fundamental truth. But the issue is this. It produced an emotional reaction, which was unexpected. And emotion is at the basis of trust. I would say this. You are independent financial advisors. The only product that you have to sell is trust. It's relationship. Who here has a client relationship going back more than 25 years? Put your hands up. It's wonderful. Many of you have longer relationships with your clients than they do with their husbands or their wives. Many of you have been present at the first marriage and the divorce, the second marriage and the second divorce. You buried the grandfather, and you were present at the birth of the grandchild, nearly. No, you have long-term relationships, and these relationships are built on one word: trust. Friendship as well, but trust. And trust is a very unfair thing because it is built in 30 years and is lost in 30 hours. And just one story about you or the bank that you have recommended or the product that you signed with can erode trust quickly. Let me give you an example of a trust issue. I went to a global conference recently of retail fund managers. And I have been doing a global survey of fund managers for the last 5 years. I always ask them the same question. We had almost every large fund represented in this conference. And I was giving a keynote just like this. I asked 3 questions. Firstly, put your hands up if you have recently recommended your own products to your own family. Oh, 1 or 2. That's nice. Okay, that's good. Well, at this conference, it was only 10% of the global industry. The next question was, put your hands up if you have your own wealth in your own retail funds. And they all put their hands up. And the next question was, if you chose of your own free will to put your own money in your own funds, keep your hands up. And almost all of them put their hands straight down again. Now, I'm just saying that in banking, in wealth management, there are big trust issues. Because I said to them, I said, that you don't trust yourselves. As an industry, what that particular conference was saying was that was a high level of mistrust of their own products in their own room, in their own industry. And this is the kind of risk that we're seeing in financial services at the moment when it comes to wealth management. And I have to say, it is the reason why you are all doing so well. Because you are independent financial advisors. Therefore, the customer chooses you for a trust issue. They trust you because you are offering objective, impartial advice. So when you then recommend a UBS product, it is not because you work for UBS. It is because, in your opinion, it's the best product. And that is why you're here. So I'm going to see, I predict we will see huge growth in this area of truly independent financial advice. Fast urban. Urban is about demographics. And this presentation, of course, is trying to gather together all the big themes you had. You had a whole session on aging and demographics yesterday. Some of you were in the healthcare workshop just now. Some of you, all of you heard about the future of the American economy. I just want to wrap some of these big ideas together. You heard yesterday that there will be 1 billion children in Africa and Asia who will soon be consumers. The greatest single growth in any market in any human history. And at the same time, we see huge contrasts. We heard about it just this morning in the opening presentation. The fact that in the European Union, where the economy is flat, we are still seeing rapid growth of high net worth individuals. Why? Because the contrasts between the wealthiest and the poorest are growing. So if you're going to see 6% growth, let's say, across the Asian region or parts of it as a whole, you are going to see 8, even 9, maybe 10% growth in the upper middle class in the same period. We can debate about the percentages, but the reason is because the numbers of super wealthy are being created faster than these economies are growing. And we can expect instability as a result from the growing contrasts between the wealthy and the poor. I was with one of the largest oil companies recently. I asked this question: how many people would it take in Africa to totally disrupt all oil production in the whole of Nigeria for 10 years, to stop it all? The answer, around 50 people with machine guns, cigarette lighters, little motorbikes and inflatable boats. 50 people out of 450 million children who are growing up today in Africa living mostly on €2 a day, all of them will see something of your life on some advertising board or a glimpse of CNN. All of them will see that in the next 15 years. But you only need 50 out of 450 million to become radical activists to close down the 7th largest oil producer in the world for 10 years. So watch out. These issues are important. We're seeing huge urbanization. China has a policy to move 300 million citizens into cities in the next 12 years. This is the greatest urban movement, again, we have ever seen, and creates enormous investment opportunities in every conceivable way in urban infrastructure. Now, what about the EU and the US? You know, of course, that 75% of all UK and US wealth is owned by those over the age of 65. You know, too, that 65% of all people who have ever lived in human history to the age of 65 are alive now, this morning, right now. You also know, perhaps, that 65% of all those over the age of 65 are women. So 75% of all American wealth is owned by those over the age of 65, but most of them are women. And we conclude that most of America is owned by old women. And, of course, you know this because most of your clients are old women, and most of you are middle-aged men. Perhaps that has something to do with it. But you know, I see very few financial institutions that are really understanding this shift of wealth to old women and targeting entire products and services to the needs of those over the age of 65. Now, at the same time, we're going to see 5 trillion euros of wealth move down a generation from those over the age of 80 to those over the age of 65. In the old days, a private banking individual may inherit maybe $1, $2, or $3 million, or $10 million, or $100 million at the age of 50, or even 45. But because mother is now living so long, it's likely that the inheritance will only happen when mother dies at the age of 100. And when that happens, the son is still around, 82. So we have a whole generation which is sending wealth down another generation to people who are already private banking customers, already retired, already have too much wealth, wealth they don't know what to do with. They have been around the world 5 times. They have given all they dare to give to their children. You know, one of the things I talk to with high net worth individuals is their families. I asked this on Sunday night at the dinner. It was a group like this. And I said to them, put your hands up if you are worried that your wealth is spoiling the character of your own children. They all put their hands up. It's a big worry because they started making the wealth for their children, for themselves and for their children. But now they are worrying that the wealth is killing their children. So I say, so what is this wealth for? Every day you get extra advice on how to make more of it. You tell me you can't spend it because every time you spend it, by accident, you make more. Because your independent financial advisors encourage you to enjoy yourself. Go and buy another house. And what about some works of art and other things like that? And they all appreciate at the same time. So the problem gets worse every year. You can't give it to your children. They are already spoiled. You are worried about the grandchildren. So what is it for? We'll come back to that. But one thing's for sure. There's a generation, as you know, which are acquiring wealth, who are very different in character, and they are looking for your time 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They want total access to everything that is inside you. And that is the nature of the relationship. They want to drive their estate. They want to run their own family office. They are happy to have you as part of their family office team, but no longer to run it all. And that's a very big change. And for some of you, that will be a disturbing experience, because I know how much at the moment you enjoy a much more active personal relationship, and with the client leaving you to do it. Now, we're talking about big numbers. In Italy, there will be over 1 million people, mainly women, over the age of 90 by 2026. Now, quite a number of those will be private banking clients. A lot of them will be very poor. And again, we'll see contrasts. So, we're in interesting times, and Europe is dying. The reason why Europe is dying is it's nothing to do with health. This is simply to do with one fact, which is the failure to make babies. If Europeans were continuing to make babies as they used to, if we had families of 5, 6, or 7 children, we would not be talking about an aging problem. The aging problem is simply because in Germany, for example, there are only 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 children per couple. What that means is, in your family tree, in the high net worth client's family, there are 8 great-grandparents, there are 4 grandparents, there are 2 parents, and 1 great-grandchild. Now, you may be laughing, but that is the truth. That is what happens when you only produce 1.3 children per couple. You halve family size in every generation. Now, that also has its challenges. And it's an issue for national well-being, because you either make babies or you have to import them. In the UK, we also have forgotten how to make babies, so we are taking them in from anywhere we can. And in the last 4 years, the UK economy has taken in 1 million new people from other countries that have forgotten how to make babies. We brought them in from Germany, from France, 400,000 from Poland, 50,000 from Slovakia, and it's just the beginning. In the next 4 years, we will probably see another 1 million people come in to the UK. Why? Because we forgot how to make babies, so our population is falling. We are getting older, so we want young people who are full of passion, full of energy to drive our economy. So watch out for huge changes in population, and watch out also for tax incentives for making more babies. We are seeing that happen in France. It's become quite successful. But can we stop the tick-tock of the clock? Can we actually reverse the aging process? I'm interested in that question, and I think the answer is possibly yes. You know that all living creatures have a language in the same basic computer code. It's Microsoft Basic. That every piece of genetic code is written in the same way, in the same organism. It's the same language. That is why your genes work in a rabbit, and a rabbit genes work in a cucumber genes work in a tree, and a tree's genes work in your body. And we can cut and paste these genes and move them around. That is why we can grow salmon, fish, to 4 times their normal length using human genes. We can do other things. We can take your bone marrow. We can take stem cells from your bones and put them into your heart, and your heart will start to beat more strongly after a heart attack. We can get 85% recovery of heart function. We can do the same with brain tissue. In animals, we have destroyed part of the brain and then restored it again using the animal's own cells. We are on the edge of an explosion of medical science. What would you give me for this? This possibility of removing all the wrinkles from someone's face, but also from their legs, their hands, and everything else. You give this drug for 4 weeks, and then you stop. It lowers blood pressure permanently because it improves the elastin of the arteries. And at the same time as the arteries improve, the skin becomes like a child. You take it for 4 weeks and you don't need it anymore. It has no side effects. The drug is already here. It's made by Alteon. Yes, write that down. Okay. Just don't buy the stock, okay? Because I tell you the good news and then the bad news. The good news is it works very well if you are a mouse or a rat. The bad news is if you're a human being, it's not so good. In fact, we don't see any sign on human skin, but we do see an effect on heart. Now, I'm just saying that we are entering a new world. And some animals don't get old. Turtles, sturgeon fish, and some humpback whales don't get old. So we are able to copy genes, perhaps in the future, from animals that do not show any physical sign of aging. These humpback whales, there are 2 types of humpbacks. Some die in 20 years. Some die in 200 years. We're comparing the genetic code of these 2. They have the same food, same sea, same environment, different genes. One dies quickly. One shows no sign of aging at all. Interesting. Can we put digital memory inside your head? Yes, we can. These are nerve cells growing into chips. And they do it quite well. Here are some other nerve cells. You can see here the chip, and here are brain cells. And these brain cells are talking to each other and also to the chip. They just grow quite naturally. Fast, urban, tribal. Tribalism is the most powerful force in the world today. It's more powerful than atomic bombs. It's more powerful than the entire military might of the United States, China, Russia, and the rest. Tribalism is when one group says we are us and you are them. Tribalism is the source of conflict, terrorism, and ethnic genocide. Tribalism is also the most powerful positive force in the whole world. Tribalism gives us culture, language, identity. Tribalism gives us community. Tribalism gives us brands and brand loyalty. Tribalism gives us teams and neighborhood. Tribalism gives us friendship, family, community, and everything that we value in human society. Tribalism is the most powerful and the most important driving force for our future. It's balanced by globalization, universalism. Tribalism says we are different. Universalism says we all want to be one. And the more universal we are, the more we feel we are losing our identity, the more the Romansh language becomes intensely important in Switzerland. And we see the same, that the more tribal and sectarian a country is, the more it rushes to become part of the European Union. And we're seeing that with Croatia. We've just seen it with Slovenia. These 2 countries should not exist. They're simply parts of one country, Yugoslavia, which has been ripped to shreds by ethnic genocide. Yet these countries are rushing to become part of the universal EU. And every successful brand builds a tribe, and all successful companies are great tribe builders. Today is a tribal event, a UBS tribal event. What is interesting, many of you are deeply loyal to UBS. I discovered why. You used to work for UBS. Hello? So you feel part of the tribe. And I know that you feel warm about that tribe because many of you have told me that. That there is a feeling of connection, a feeling of family. It doesn't mean you always recommend a UBS product. You are independent. But you do have a sense of belonging. You do have a deep understanding of the bank, which is important to you if you're going to recommend products and services. And it comes out of that sense of relationship and commitment. So each tribe has its own leadership style. I thought you'd like to see the Reebok leadership style.
When we asked Reebok to send us Terry Tate, some people thought we were crazy. But I'm a firm believer in paradigm breaking, outside-the-box thinking.
Hey, buddy.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
And since Terry's been with us, our productivity has gone up 46%. We're getting more from our employees than ever before.
You know you need a cover sheet on your TPS reports, Richard! That ain't new, baby!
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Janice!
But what's really impressed me is how Terry's become part of the Felcher family.
Yeah, baby!
He fits right in here.
That's a long-distance call, Doug!
To be honest, I wish Reebok sent us 10 Terry Tates.
You want to play games, Gene? Well, when it's game time, it's pay time, baby! Woo!
Okay. Well, you know, joking aside, but this is the reason why many mergers destroy shareholder value. It's because we need to understand tribes if we're to create real value when we put different tribes together. Fast, urban, tribal, and as I've already mentioned, the balance of tribalism is universalism or globalization. And watch out for these two great giants, India and China, and what they're starting to do together. You may think they don't talk, but they certainly trade. And we can expect a continued dramatic rise in the interdependence of these countries. And one of the challenges for us is knowing what's going to happen about the outsourcing issue. But before we look at that, I just want to say that we can expect some of the most exciting investment opportunities for your clients amongst companies that are not trading with the middle class of India, the top 200 million. They are trading with the bottom of the pyramid. They are trading with 800 million people who are living on €3 or €4 a day. A good example is Hindustan Lever, and you may be familiar with this story. Hindustan Lever make most of their profits now in shampoo from the bottom of the pyramid, the poorest of the poor, the people in the slums. This is some of the most expensive shampoo in the world on a per mil basis. They divide up the sachets, these bottles, into tiny sachets of only 6 mils, and they're seeing 53% of their sales there. But as I say, their best profit margin happens with these kind of micro products. And you're going to see the same happen in financial services. We know about microfinance, of course. That's been around a long time. But you are now seeing new financial services products attached to microfinance, so that someone who has a loan of only €5 is now buying a micro insurance product to insure that particular loan. I expect huge growth in all of these kinds of bottom of the pyramid schemes because there are very significant markets to be made there, in telecom, in food, in cosmetics, wherever you think. Now, the outsourcing story continues to be controversial, and we can debate about where the great outsourcing will go next. India, of course, has its advantages in terms of software. In fact, India alone produces 860,000 new IT graduates every year. China, of course, with the great manufacturing giant. But if we look at India, even just Infosys, just that company, produces 25,000 new IT graduates from its own university. That is 4 times the entire output of all universities in the whole of the United Kingdom for IT. Just one company in India. So you can see that the outsourcing story is not just being driven by economics, but by intellectual capital. Now, as the economics are changing very fast, we cannot go on outsourcing to India for economic reasons for much longer. And here is the reason why. India inflation rates for salaries are 14% per year. It will not take long at this rate before the economic advantage of outsourcing will almost have disappeared. Within the next 5 or 6 years, it will be gone. So India is going to have to find other reasons to get its market in order to grow the outsourcing. Now, all of this means falling prices, as you've noticed. Prices of just about everything have fallen over 20 years. The price of your shirt, the price of your shoes are down by 80%. The price of your car, in real terms, fallen by 50%. The price of your CD player by 100, 200, 300%. The price of your telecom costs have fallen towards zero. The price of oil has fallen too. Yes, it has. I remember when we first got married in 1978-9. I remember the oil prices then. And I know, as you do, that the oil prices today are still significantly lower than they were then, in real terms, when we allow for inflation. So we've seen massive deflation in just about every sector except for health, education, and one or two service industries, including yours. Which is how you're able to charge so much. But of course, that's one of the reasons why house prices have increased in many countries. There's nothing else to spend money on these days. Everything else is falling towards zero. Even energy costs are lower than they have been historically. So, what's interesting, therefore, is when you look at the outsourcing argument, what happens. Because the reason you outsource is to help this cost process. Globalization, outsourcing, technology, it all produces lower prices. As a result of that, where do your Swiss francs go? I'll tell you where my pounds go. In the old days, I can just remember the days when I used to use a robot to wash my car. Not now. That's a last century idea. Now, I pay 15 people from Croatia to do the same thing. Why? Because it's roughly the same price and it's better value. Outsourcing. Interesting. Instead, I remember the days when I used to go into a coffee shop and order some orange juice, and the orange juice came out of a UHT carton. Now, I want freshly squeezed. No, I want to watch someone squeeze it and then pour it in, right? You're the same. Why? Because when the price of everything has fallen towards zero, we add value in the services we buy by asking for more time to be used. So what's happening is I'm creating new jobs, outsourcing manufacturing, and creating new jobs for Croatians to wash my car or squeeze my orange juice. At the same time, we are seeing a demand for Western-style products and services from some of these 860,000 new IT graduates every year. Each one of these IT graduates in India is generating jobs for up to 100 other people in the local economy. And some of that is being tapped off by high net worth individuals who are then wanting to buy Giorgio Armani suits and the fast cars and boats and global holidays and things like that, and their second houses in the UK and everywhere else. So when you put these two things together, research at London Business School suggests that the actual net loss of jobs from the European Union or from the American economy could turn out to be almost zero when you put all of that together. But we'll see. It's complicated. Fast, urban, tribal, universal, radical. Radical is about single-issue activism and the death of politics. Radical is about the fact that we no longer have left or right, but we have all kinds of clusters of single issues. Each of them can be very emotional. It could be money laundering, child labor, air pollution, food safety. It doesn't matter what it is. But one thing's for sure, compliance is dead. Compliance will keep you out of prison, my friends. That's the good news. But it will not protect your reputation, nor your brand, nor the reputation of your bank that you work with. And why? Because, of course, the standards keep changing. It used to be perfectly possible to comply and to bribe. In fact, so much so that in some countries in the EU, quite recently, you could pay your bribe and then write down the amount of your bribe and send it to the government. And when you sent it to the government, they gave you a tax rebate. So the more you bribe, the more the government pays you. In fact, the government is actually encouraging you to bribe. It's on the audit sheet as a legitimate business expense. But my friends, that doesn't work today. And in fact, if I have an email here which shows that you approved a $5 million bribe to someone in Russia in 1996, it won't help you when it says stamped for government approval and tax refund. What we learn, therefore, is that new scandals change public opinion. I said the future is not about compliance, it's not about technology, it's about emotion. And therefore we need to understand where the consumer is thinking and feeling in the future. And that's certainly true of big issues like global warming. Now, we can have a great debate about this graph, but one thing's for sure, whether you believe there's a relationship between global warming and this graph is irrelevant. What's important is what people feel about it. And I promise you, the feeling is already strong, passionate, and growing. That is why we're seeing an explosion of technology to make people carbon neutral. My plane journey here was on water power. I had a water-powered plane. Why? Because my company invested in water power technology in New Zealand to stop some families burning carbon. My company then gained a carbon credit, which I have used to offset all the flying that I'm doing across the world this year. So all my plane journeys are powered by water. That's just an example of the offset industry, which is very low cost. The cost of a water-powered flight from Geneva to London is around 10 euros. That's all. So it won't be long before you'll find some airline decides to make all its flights water-powered. The same can be true of taxis, of buildings, and of banks. Now, this is an interesting graph. I won't spend more than a few seconds on it, but you can look it up if you want to on the World Data Center for Climate Change, or if you type in Antarctica ice cores into Google. Just note there are two colors. One is red, one is blue. The timeline is 40,000 years, 400,000 years. This is 450,000 years ago. Drilling into ice samples 3.2 kilometers deep in Antarctica. We cut the ice samples into slices. We analyze the trapped bubbles of air. We look at carbon dioxide levels. That's the blue one. We look at isotopes of hydrogen. That is the red one. And these isotopes, the balance of isotopes of hydrogen in the water, in those ice crystals, that gives us a indication of what the surface temperature was like when that ice was formed. And you can see a very convincing relationship between carbon dioxide levels and temperature. And what is more, you can see a rise in carbon dioxide levels way beyond any height we have ever seen, which is about here, and a big question mark about India and China and what will happen in the near future, and an even bigger question about what will happen to the temperature of the Earth. To give you an idea of how sensitive this is, every time the carbon dioxide level went this low, here on this side, we saw 1 mile of ice over parts of the UK. 1 mile of it. So when we are talking about the highest level of carbon dioxide today than we have seen for 1 million years, we recognize that is significant. When we're seeing a projected rise up to here of carbon dioxide, we understand why it is that some people are now predicting a rise in sea levels that could be a threat to most coastal cities. And that is why you will see a big discussion about sequestration, capturing carbon dioxide and pushing it back down the pipe back under the earth. Now, you may not agree with the science, but that's irrelevant. The future is about emotion, and the emotions will drive it. Fast, urban, tribal, universal, radical, ethical. How do we live in this crazy world? Well, as I often ask high net worth individuals, the most important question is this: how do you define personal success? Is it just financial? Or is it being happily married? Is it having children that still want to know you? Is it feeling that you've made a difference in the world in which you live? And that is a challenge. Look at this survey. 90% of 30 to 40-year-olds want to leave conventional business jobs. 60% of people in the UK see no meaningful purpose in their work or their organization. There's a new trend. The biggest driver in terms of career for many people is now getting a work-life balance. It's having a better work-life balance. And this is a problem in succession planning for these family businesses. It's trying to engage a generation to commit the same kinds of work and effort that the previous generation did. And it's very, very difficult unless they understand the reason. And their passions have moved on. Their passions are for community often. In fact, in most of Europe, most people give time to things they are really passionate about. Let me ask here. I want you to put your hands in the air if in the last 2 years you have given time for something you believed in. Maybe you shook a tin for the tsunami disaster. Maybe you gave time to the Red Cross. Maybe you audited the accounts of a small not-for-profit organization. Maybe you just swept the ice from the home of an old lady who lives at the end of the street. Maybe you help your children's school, whatever it is. If you've given time, maybe to your church as I have, or your synagogue or the mosque. Put your hands up if you've given time to things that you believe in. Look around. The spirit of philanthropy is here. And you know what? Some of you didn't because you are so busy right now. So you outsourced it. You gave money instead. And this is because of a universal passion that there is amongst us. A passion for friendship and family, which is the work-life balance discussion. A passion for community, which is why you give time. A passion for the wider world. Put your hands in the air if in the last 2 years you've had a passionate conversation about the war in Iraq, American foreign policy, what the British should do or not do, and the future of Iran. Put your hands up. Why? Put your hands up if you have friends or family in these countries. It's nothing to do with us. But we are passionate. I promise you, your clients are passionate. Their children are passionate. Their cousins, nephews, and nieces are passionate. The shareholders of UBS are passionate. The board of UBS shares these same passions. The passions, yes, for yourself. Yes, of course. To preserve the high net worth of an individual. Yes, they want it. But the passion for their families, for friends, for community, for our future, our survival, the quality of life on earth. Yes, all of these things are important. And we are going to see huge growth in this area. I think you're going to find many of you, if you want a big business opportunity for the future, it will be to extend beyond wealth management to life management, to beyond just real estate planning or retail funds or equities or venture capital, to other issues such as making a difference. What is your life goal? What do you want to do with this wealth? You've decided to give 1 million to each of the great-grandchildren, 2 million to each of the grandchildren, 100 million to each of the children, and then you changed your mind, it was only 1 million. But we have another problem. We have 495 million last year. It will be 510 this year and 600 next year. So can we talk about this one? And then, of course, you're talking philanthropy. You're talking making a difference. You're talking about lasting legacy. And you're talking about the most important financial decisions that they will ever make that maybe has not been part of your primary agenda up until then. So in conclusion then, while companies talk about profits, return on equity and shareholder value, and sometimes about customers, high net worth individuals are certainly having a different conversation with me than perhaps they were 10 years ago. And I think this is a big opportunity. So, building a better world, that's what it's all about. That's why we're making the money. Not just so you can give more money to a generation who are already spoiled by it, but to make a difference, to achieve your own objectives. And you know what? As you do that, you'll find lights go on. When you connect my experience with our own non-profit foundation, and you've seen it in your own lives and the hands that went up about community involvement, you see passion. And I will learn more about you in 3 minutes, talking to you about the reasons you put your hands up, than I will in 30 years working with you in the same team. But when you connect with all the passions that people have, they will follow you to the ends of the earth. They will trust you completely. They will buy whatever it is that you want to sell with pride. They will gossip about what you do to all their own friends and relationships. And what is more, they may even be willing to work for you for next to nothing. Thank you very much.